Hi everyone, welcome back to Ilum Sabers. Today's video is one that I've wanted to make for quite a while. It is going to be the long-awaited discussion and review of the Anakin Starkiller Perfect Cast V3. So this hilt was made by Anakin Starkiller, as I mentioned. Anakin Starkiller produces hilts and sells them through his company at Star's End or starsend.com. These hilts are very accurate. He has very high threshold for his accuracy when it comes to the hilts he designs. He's done a lot of work through his own company, but also partnering with other companies such as TXQ. Some of his more prominent runs in the past few years have been the Rescuer, which is probably his most famous that he's done, and it's based off of the Mandalorian Luke Skywalker hilt. His was the first out there when that came out. It released very soon after that episode, and then I think it wasn't for several more years until someone else thought to even do a Mandalorian hilt. And I think we actually got the TXQ Book of Boba Fett before we got a second version of the Mandalorian hilt. So the Rescuer was his, and that was the Luke Skywalker hilt that was one of the ones I've reviewed on this channel before. It has both the cannon and FX upper sections. It's really a great hilt. It was a DIY kit, like most of his hilts are, and like the Perfect Cast was. He's also released fully finished resin replicas of the Ahsoka series belt hangers. He has also done his own versions of several different Obi-Wan lightsabers, both on his own and with TXQ. He worked with TXQ to do a V2 hilt in recent years, and then of course his very well-known V2 runs through At Star's End, the most recent of which I believe is still the DS2 V2. And all of those are really quality hilts, so when I had the opportunity to purchase a V3 from him that was already finished for my collection, I was very excited to do so. I did not have a V3 yet, which was really the only big gaping hole that I had in my Luke Saber collection, and it really just made sense. I had been looking for a V3 for a while. There aren't a lot of V3s that are out there. The Rudy Pando is a really common one, although even in recent years you see a lot less of that one. It seems like the V3 supply has kind of dwindled just because it is not as common as the Hero, not as sought after as the Hero or the V2, which you see more often in the film. A little bit of background on this hilt before we actually take a close look at it. The V3 was one of the hilts used in Return of the Jedi, along with the Hero, or the V1, which is what we call it, the V2, and then a whole bunch of others that I've reviewed on this channel, from the I See You Have Constructed a New Lightsaber, the Yuma, many different resin hilts. The V3 is among those, although it was used a lot more than some of those hilts. So like the resin hilts were not used very much, right? Each one was pretty much built for a specific scene or a stunt. The V3 was Luke's primary dueling saber in that film. So the duel with Darth Vader at the end of the film, he's using the V3 with its long stunt blade attached. Later on, the V3 was recast into several different versions, several different hilts, several of those which became used, or other metal versions that were used later on, like the Yuma or the Hero. So without too much more, let's go ahead and get a closer look at this hilt. We'll talk a little bit more about the history of this hilt, both the real hilt and the replica by Anakin Starkiller, and where you can find one of these if you are interested, as well as the DIY aspects of this hilt. All right, so now we've got a bit of a closer look at the Perfect Cast V3. Again, this is by Anakin Starkiller at Star's End. I don't believe these are still available, although you can check his website. He does sometimes re-release hilts or find overstock that he then later will sell. But I just want to go over this from top to bottom, looking at some of the details on this hilt and talking about them. So, first thing about the V3 that you should probably know is that it was, of course, the dueling hilt that Luke used. But before that, it was one of Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan hilts as well, also for dueling. When they had to start filming Return of the Jedi, they realized that they hadn't really figured out what to do about Luke's lightsaber. He loses it at the end of Empire Strikes Back when his hand is cut off, and he doesn't really get a replacement on screen. So they kind of work backwards, right? I believe a lot of the dueling scenes were actually shot close to the beginning of production for Return of the Jedi, so they start there. And he's got Obi-Wan's lightsabers because that's what they had to use. And then throughout the film, they kind of flesh out this new lightsaber that Luke is using, even going so far as to shoot the pickup scenes toward the end of production where Luke is actually building his lightsaber. And this hilt did not look like this when it was fresh off the set of A New Hope. So a lot of these, a lot of what you see here were changes that were made to make it look more like the hilt that we see Luke have in that scene where he's building his lightsaber in the cave. So this is actually set up in what is called the NASA configuration. There's also the production, the production variant, and so that's what it's going to have looked like during the production of The Return of the Jedi. But again, the hilt changes so much throughout its life that the post-production NASA version that we call it is kind of the one that most people refer to when they're talking about the V3, because the hilt was included in some of the Star Wars art books of the time. They actually took pictures of the V3 in its condition like this, and they included it in the Return of the Jedi like behind the scenes books and weapons encyclopedias, things like that. And this was Luke's lightsaber. For whatever reason, the hero didn't really become prominent in that kind of media until a little bit later. But the reason we call it NASA is because there was an exhibit with NASA. And so this is when the hilt was dressed up and made to look a little bit more presentable, because before this, it was pretty gnarly, kind of like the V2, although still with its own differences. So I'm going to go over kind of some of these changes that were made. Starting at the top here, you'll notice that unlike most Luke hilts, there is not a nub here coming out of the emitter. There's no extended emitter here. Normally, Luke hilts will have that, but the V3 did not. And so the V3 in its current condition is basically like this, although this may be darkened on the inside. Going down a little further, you've got this black ring around the emitter, which is probably a leftover piece from when it was an Obi-Wan hilt, because we know that the Mark I had a darker emitter, and so they were probably kind of copying that when they made this prop. And then we've got this chrome tape around the emitter. Now, whether or not that's covering more sort of dark metal on the prop, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised. But they certainly are trying to make it shinier by using this chrome tape. And so this has the chrome tape on it. And then going a little further down, you've got this neck that's been painted copper. And this is supposed to match the hero, or at least approximate a close facsimile of the hero. One thing that my version is missing that you really do want on an accurate version is up here, it should be kind of messy and have kind of some ugly sort of chunky bits up here, right between the emitter and the like the bottom of the emitter cup and the top of this copper on the neck here. I do plan to add that, but when I purchased it exactly like this. So it was largely completed with some small things needing finished. So I haven't gotten around to adding those yet. Normally people will use JB Weld and kind of clump it up along the perimeter of that sort of crease. And then you'll just go through and paint it copper. So moving further down here, we've got the grip section, and this is done with a black paint, and it's kind of done sloppily on purpose. You really want the V3 to look very thrown together, because it was. And so if you look at it sort of in some of these angles here, you can see that the paint has a bit of an aged and sort of almost flaky look to it. And you want that for the V3. You want it to be kind of sloppy looking. You've got some kind of chunks that have come out of it here, right? That's a lot like what we have for the V2 as well. Although I think we have a lot more reference for the V2 as well, as opposed to as far as like what specific things are supposed to be where. But you can also tell there's been some black wash done on here, which I really appreciate. It really just makes it a little less shiny. Makes it look a little bit more in universe, a little bit more weathered, lived in, that kind of thing. Moving down, you'll see the clamp. So this is one of the big differences from some of the other versions. This clamp has chrome tape on it. So this is the V3 clamp. It's got 1, 2, 3 holes that are drilled into it, which is how the V3 is supposed to be. And then you've got chrome tape all over the clamp itself, as well as on the bars of the box. Something else you want to notice is that the Graflex logo is upside down. So the G, you can see the G there, RAFLEX, that's upside down, and it should be. A lot of times I see folks have the Graflex clamp with the holes drilled in the correct position, but the clamp is actually right side up, so the holes are actually drilled on the opposite end of where it should be. And at that point, you kind of can't do anything about it because the holes are already there. So just keep that in mind if you're drilling holes. Make sure you put them in the right place. And then also, I've put some chrome tape on the lever here. I have it on fairly good authority that while the lever is rusted on the prop, and in a lot of the reference photos you see, there is rust on the lever, it has, in recent years, been sort of cleaned up with chrome tape to make it look a little more presentable. So I did put that on there. My lever, my whole clamp is a replica clamp. The lever is a replica, all of it. So there's no rust on it. So I thought that the chrome tape would just be an easy addition to make it a little more accurate, because a clean lever is not accurate, not as accurate as a rusty lever, but a taped lever is not too bad. You'll also notice my clamp card here is not accurate, and it's also kind of scratched down the middle. This is because when I bought this, it didn't come with a clamp card, so I am working on getting an accurate clamp card in this hilt. But in the meantime, I had this leftover clamp card from an old project. Of course, you can see it's scratched, which is why I didn't end up using it in that project. But it's a fairly decent stand-in V3 clamp. So until I get an accurate clamp card, it's just going to be sitting on the shelf with this clamp, because why not? Better than nothing. You'll also see that there's a pretty significant damage mark here. And I did this as accurately as I could. So the clamp and the tape on the clamp is work that I did myself. And working off of reference photos, this is pretty good. sort of adjacent from this hole here, there's not another hole in the clamp, but a hole in the tape where it's been kind of torn open. So I did do that, and I think that turned out pretty well. The booster section is fairly plain. It's got some nice weathering to it, a nice black wash, and some light scratching from some steel wool or something like that. And then some sort of black wash around this retention screw here. I really like that detail. There's more chrome tape here beneath the booster. The pommel cubes are aged and weathered as well. And then you've got more chrome tape around the perimeter of the pommel. You'll notice I don't have my D-ring in here yet. That's because there is some damage on the pommel cubes that I would like to replicate, and that's going to be easier to do without the D-ring in place. So I don't want to put that D-ring in until then. I do believe this is the correct orientation, though, for the D-ring to the card. I did orient this myself. You can just, loosen the clamp and move it all around however you want to. But it's similar to the Hero, where you've got the pommel cube offset slightly to the left. But I think this is actually offset a bit more than the Hero. Trying to see if there's anything I'm missing here. I don't think so. This is a really cool hilt. If you're doing one of these, there aren't many V3s out there to begin with, and there are no V3s that I'm aware of that come finished. So whether you're getting a Rudy Pando or I think maybe Corbant at one point did the V3 to add to their V1 and V2 line. So if you're getting that one, or the Perfect Cast, whatever you're getting, no V3 is going to come to you and be accurate. Just the nature of how these things work. So you can either look out for one on the second hand market that has already been customized and made accurate. Of course, you're going to be going based on what somebody else has done and what they thought was accurate. So there's a bit of give and take there. But if you do get a Perfect Cast, it will be completely unfinished when you get it, fully silver. So none of the tape will be applied. None of the paint will be on here. I'm not even sure that it comes with a clamp, actually. So some will come with more things than others, but no matter what you get, there will be DIY work to do. And if you are doing it, I really suggest just take your time using the reference photos and being a little sloppy about it, like intentionally sloppy. So the V3 was done sloppily. It was put together sloppily. And at a distance, it looks cool. But if you really get up close and look at those reference photos really closely, it's kind of gnarly in its own way. So don't be afraid to be a little bit sloppy with it. Oh, you can also see there's a hole here in the emitter, right? So this set screw that goes through the chrome tape. You do want that hole to be there. But yeah, so overall, if you're doing one of these, don't be afraid to get a little messy with it. Take some liberties, make it a little messier here and there than maybe what the references can be proven to show. I mean, you probably don't want to go against the reference. Like if the reference shows the D-ring over here, you don't want it over here. Or if it shows, copper paint, you don't want to use purple or something. But where there is sort of some wiggle room, you should work within that and make it look kind of sloppy, kind of like it's used, like it's a part of a lived-in universe. Because that really is what sets Star Wars apart in a lot of ways. And I think this piece is a really good example of that. I think the messier that it looks, the more real you can be convinced that it is. So definitely worth considering there. And if you are a fan of the Luke hilt, especially the Return of the Jedi hilt or any of the variants of his thin neck, I definitely would encourage looking into the V3. Anakin Starkiller has done a great job on this. You should definitely check out some of his Facebook posts and his website to see kind of how he comes up with his design. But essentially, it is cast. It's sort of a legacy cast, so it has some connections back to the original prop in the way that it was created. Pretty interesting stuff to learn about, but I don't want to sort of misrepresent the work that he did, so I'm going to go ahead and kind of refer you to him on that. But this hilt is really great. I'm really happy with it overall. I think it's a great addition, especially if you've got the V1, the V2. No Luke collection is complete without a V3. So definitely gonna enjoy this one. Gonna enjoy working on it, getting it a little closer, and I hope to get a new sort of updated video out on this hilt once I've gotten some of those details like the damage done, the D-ring added. Of course, there is sort of the seam that goes down along the grip here. So once some of those things are done, I'm very much looking forward to kind of giving an update on this. But until then, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the wide camera, do the outro, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in to this week's video. I really enjoyed talking about Anakin Starkiller's Perfect Cast V3. I'm really interested to see what he's got coming out next, and hopefully, if you were interested in one, you are able to find one. Of course, they are available pretty much only on the secondary market these days, but there is always hope of another run, whether by Starkiller or by another saber company. There are always new runs being announced. So I'll leave you with that, and until next time, may the Force be with you.